afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to today's presentation on our platform, Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. My name is Dr. Gloria Neto, the director of the center. This has been a weekly activity in the last 3 months, and we've had very, very interesting cases. Today is going to be the last one for the year 2021. And I'm very happy to say I'm happy with the presenter we have today, because it's a very good way to wrap up the year, to have somebody who is going to talk to us about history. History is very important. And today we have Dr. Sylvester Igbasu, who is from Benue State University, Makurdi, Nigeria. He is an associate professor. Dr. Igbasu had all his studies in Benue State University, first degree, master's, and PhD, all in his alma mater. So, and he served in Kano, Bayero University, then came back to his alma mater. So you can see he's a very loyal person to his state, because he is there and refused to leave that state. So I really admire him for remaining there to grow through his academic career. He started as a graduate assistant in that university in 2002, and then moved to the post of assistant lecturer 2005, moved to the post of lecturer 2 2008, moved to the post of lecturer 1 2011, and moved to the post of senior lecturer 2014, and moved to the post of associate professor in 2017. And I know now he's being considered for his full professorial chair, which is already in progress. So he has a very enviable career progression, because every time he's due, he's there and he gets it. So I really admire that in him. He's a very seasoned academic and has been consistent in his ranking. From any year he's due, he's there. So that is one thing I know about this presenter today. We are happy to have him present to us today, and the title of his presentation is Migrations in Nigeria in the Wake of Prevailing Selected Historical Trajectories. So I'm happy to hand over to Dr. Igbasu to share his intellectual property with us. We really appreciate his presence. Doctor, over to you. You already have started sharing your screen, and you already visibly sharing your slides with us. So you can go ahead and slide. We are giving you 35-40 minutes max as a presenter, so that people can have the opportunity to comment and ask questions. So over to you, Doc. Thank you.
It's quite important, and like I said, for me, it's an imperative, because right from the inception of human existence, mankind has been on the move, and from time immemorial, human beings have moved from one point to the other, and you will discover that from the history of our nation today, many of the ethnic nationalities that form this particular nation, have their own side of the story, which has to do with migrations from one point to the other, and from those points to the current or the present locations they are found today in Nigeria. And so in looking at migration, you will discover that all of these nationalities have their histories in that. And like I've stated in my introduction, I said ever since the earliest humans began to spread, they have been on the move. So In Nigeria particularly, there are more than 250 million, 250 ethnic groups that we have. And of course, out of all of these ethnic groups, you discover that they trace their histories to migratory trends. And so I said also that there are more than 250 millions today that have been involved in this process of migration, and is the highest number since the World War II and possibly ever. So migrants have always been a point of discussion in the world history. So we discovered that Nigeria honestly became independent in 1960, but before the independent period of Nigeria, there has been this issue of migrations. For purposes of this paper, we have highlighted on some of the ethnic groups that we have actually stressed their histories or surveyed their histories using this migration. And we have said that these ethnic groups are the 8 largest ethnic groups in Nigeria. We started with the Hausa, the Yoruba, Igbo, Kanuri, Fulani, Ibibio, Ijo, the Tiv, and we have surveyed their histories, and all of their histories have laid credence to this issue of migration. So we are saying that migration is quite important, and it has to be understood in that perspective. We have looked at this issue, migrations in Nigeria, in the wake of selected historical trajectories using the different historical epochs. And we have said that the periods in question have to start from the pre-colonial times down to the colonial and up to the post-colonial. But the way the paper is segmented, we have looked largely from the point of view of the survey of these histories of the ethnic groups that we have mentioned. And then we have also looked at the prevailing external forces that informed these migrations in Nigeria. And we have equally looked at globalization and the rising human trafficking in Nigeria. We have equally captured the issue of rural-urban migrations during the colonial period. And it is from this point of view that we have looked at migration generally in this nation. So starting from the survey, like I've earlier mentioned, we have looked at the histories. But before we go into the survey, in understanding the concept of migration, let us know the meaning itself. It's movement. You know, it's common knowledge that migration has to do with movement of people or individuals from one point to the other. So I didn't bother to go to the conceptualization because it's as simple as it is. I believe that the full paper, when you look at it, when one looks at it, he will understand the perspectives that I have outlined in this discourse. So looking at the ethnic groups like I've mentioned, I will start with the Hausa. The Hausa talk about their movement from the Lake Chad Basin to the current places, the current place they are found. The Tiv talk about their movement from the southern part of Africa across the Congo down to Swem and down to the different points down to the Benue Valley area where they are found today. And then the Yoruba also talk about Oduduwa, how he migrated, how in fact perspectives say that he came from heaven. And then other perspectives talk about how he moved from the Middle East down to the place that he's found. And where he moved down to the place and then fathered the entire Yoruba nation, and in the particular location that they are found today. And we have also looked at the migrations of other ethnic groups, as like I've mentioned, in that order. So I won't bother to go much into them and then move further. Now, when you are talking about migrations in Nigeria, the way the paper is framed is in a manner that you will discover there are some forms of migrations within Nigeria, people moving from one point to the other in Nigeria, in the Nigerian region that we have today. And now there is also this migratory movement from Nigeria outside of the shores of Nigeria. And we have said that it's migration within and without, or migration within Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. And we have decided to say that the one within Nigeria, to a large extent, we can say is welcome, but the one that has to do with movement from Nigeria outside the shores, and outside to other parts of Nigeria, is the one that we are saying is a point of concern. Now, these prevailing external forces, I have selected the major historical epochs, which are as follows: the Trans-Saharan trade and the transatlantic slave trade era. And these eras, as I have presented them, they have moved massively people from this part of the world, that is Nigeria, to the other parts of the world. The Trans-Saharan trade, as we have it, we have looked at it in this form, that it provided a foundation for the emergence of the transatlantic slave trade. And we equally say that this trade was an activity in which different commodities were exchanged across long distances. And there were 4 major centers, that were involved in this trade in this part of the world, that is Nigeria. We have the Ngonu, we have the Ngazagamo, Kukawa, Nguru, Kano, Katsina, and then the other parts of Hausa land. And we say that within this same form of trade, it was established that humans were moved from Nigeria by way of slavery and taken to the other parts of the world, particularly Europe, the Middle East, and the other parts of the world. And it was from this trans-Saharan trade that the transatlantic slave trade we have seen took its foundation. And many historians have this belief that the trans-Saharan trade laid the foundation for the subsequent evolution of transatlantic slave trade. Up to the time of the emergence of this trade, we discovered that massively people honestly migrated from Nigeria to the other parts. And during the transatlantic slave trade, of course, scholars have argued that it was a form of trade that took a long period of time, for about 4 centuries. And the victims of this trade were all blacks. They were the Negroes. And this also led to the evolution of an ideology which manifested as racism. So with the emergence of this trade, many people were moved from Nigeria to particularly the New World or America. And you will discover that many scholars have argued, particularly in Ikuri, and then some other conservative scholars have said the numbers, have also stated their figures or their numbers with respect to how many people were involved in this trade. But of course, our concern is that people were moved massively to America and even other parts of the world during this period. Now, we have the bulk of people that were sold into slavery, constituting what we call the able-bodied men that would have stayed back in Nigeria and developed this nation, being moved to this part of the world. And that was, to a large extent, laying a foundation for the underdevelopment of Nigeria. For people like Walter Rodney, he argues that slavery and slave trade was the basis for the underdevelopment of Africa and by extension, Nigeria. So we discovered that these forms of trade massively moved people or made people to migrate from Nigeria to these other parts of the world. Now, we are calling this migration because though it was a threat in a way, but it was a forceful form, it was a forceful migration because people were forcefully moved from this part of the world to the other parts. And so these were some of the basic prevailing external forces that occasioned the phenomenon of migration at this point in time. Now, we are saying that with this form of migration, people from Nigeria, the population of Nigeria was no longer the same. And like I stated, it lasted for several centuries. So it marked its way, down the development in history that the proponents of this form of trade and even the major leaders within the New World, within Europe, felt that it was no longer feasible to have slavery and slave trade on. But of course, with the emergence of industrial revolution, now slavery and slave trade was no longer in vogue, and it was felt that another form of trade come on board. So by 1807, slavery and slave trade was abolished formally by Britain. And it now lessened this particular migratory trend because people were no longer being moved, though people were clandestinely, some European powers were clandestinely moving people by way of slaves still to the New World, particularly Portugal, Spain, and the rest were doing these things secretly, but of course it was officially abolished. So with the abolition of slavery and slave trade, another form of trade came on board, which was the legitimate trade in quote. Of course, with the legitimate trade, it was trade in forest products and no longer trade in humans. So people were no longer moved forcefully to the New World and other parts of the world. But later in history, the colonial form of government came on board. And with the coming on board of colonialism, another aspect of migration now came on board, and this leads us to the rural-urban migration, globalization, and human trafficking in Nigeria, because I lumped up this together in order to discuss even the post-colonial times. But during the colonial times, the colonial government had honestly laid emphasis on massive exploitation of the rural settings. And so opportunities that would have been there for people in the rural areas to benefit from were no longer in existence. So people needed to move from these rural settings to the urban centers and take advantage of the massive opportunities that were there. For example, employment in white-collar jobs, and then to also take advantage of other kinds of jobs that were provided by the colonial authorities. So massively, rural-urban migration took effect all along during the colonial period. And in Nigeria, there are specific examples that are found in the full paper that will see that in Nigeria, people moved from one point to the other inside. The urban centers emerged, but the rural areas were now impoverished deliberately because the colonial government was bent on exploiting the existing resources of these areas. So we have scholars like Abbas stating it clearly that when colonialism exploited the resources of the rural areas, there was this increased level of rural poverty. And this changed the entire structure of the rural economy, as it were. And for him, this marked the beginning of an era because people were no longer looking at the rural settings in order to continue, their existence. People felt that any meaningful living or meaningful existence has to do with, staying in the urban area. It is only in the urban area that you can get any uh, meaningful thing to lay your hands on and then to also exist. So this exactly uh, led to the lopsidedness in terms of the movement of people from one point to the other in Nigeria. People massively moved from rural centers to urban centers. And there is this other issue of the activities of the railway authorities or the rail lines that were laid by the colonial government, rail transport generally. Rail transport led to the existence of stations, led to the existence of particular points where the trains were coming in, taking people and also bringing people into those places. So some of these points, as highlighted, later gradually, evolved and developed to become urban centers. And people honestly stayed in them. And then it became the major urban centers that we have. There is also a table provided here that we can also learn some few things from it with respect to how rail transportation led to this emergence of urban towns, and then how people moved from their rural areas and people those urban centers, those centers. Now, at the moment in the post-colonial times, we have up to 42 of these stations that we made mention of. And of course, this particular 42 stations in Nigeria that we have today didn't just start now, they evolved over time to come to the kind of number that we have now. So the Nigerian population, as a consequence, took advantage of these rail facilities and other amenities in urban centers and migrated from their rural settings to these urban areas. And that is the point that we are making. So in the full paper, we have an aspect of rural migration from one rural point to the other rural point. But of course, if we look at the perspectives of migration, you discover that some of those push and pull factors, as it were, led to this kind of movement. So people moving from one rural point to the other, to the other rural point because of the existing resources in the other rural area that are not found in their own areas. And all of this led to the movement from one rural area to the other. Of course, in the full paper, we even have the issue of agriculture, people taking advantage of agricultural resources or agricultural endowments of certain rural areas, and they are equally also moving to those areas in order to take advantage of those resources and now boost their agricultural production. All of that, you can find that in the full paper. Now, during the post-colonial times, you discover that is after the independence period. You had Nigerians migrating from rural to urban centers as well for employment purposes, because the post-colonial government did not deviate from the colonial provisions with respect to issues of white-collar jobs. So people necessarily needed these white-collar jobs, and as many as went to school, acquired formal Western education, needed to also take advantage of that. And most of these were found in the urban centers, and so people needed to migrate to move to those urban centers and take advantage of the existing employments or jobs. So the full paper contains the details that we have. Now, this has led us to the issue of globalization. What is globalization? Of course, globalization has a history, but we will not bother ourselves to go into that history because we discover that the stages of globalization as it were, they have to even start from the period of mercantilism and bullionism when the European nations were exploring, all the world in search of these precious materials, down to the area of slavery and slave trade, down to the area of legitimate trade, down to the area of colonialism. And now that we are talking about communication network, globalization can be said to follow this kind of trajectory or this kind of history that we have, that we can trace it to. But what is important to us at this point is how the forces of globalization have made, some of these issues of the movement of mankind from one point to the other, quite imperative. How movement of people has become the issue in world affairs. Of course, when we look at what is happening now with respect to refugees, with respect to migrants moving from one point to the other and how they're having difficulties in other parts of the world, it is all traced to these forces of globalization. And these forces have honestly made the map of the world to be tampered with in a way, because it is only where there are some of these better conditions of living are found that people clamor to go to. People necessarily need to go to those places because they feel that they will have better living conditions. And so even in Nigeria here, people migrate to the other parts of the world in search of some of these better living conditions. Others migrate because they want to get good health facilities or health care in those places. Others migrate because they would like to go in there and get good jobs in that order. And all of that have led to massive migratory activities that can be seen in this part of the world. Now, globalization and the rising human trafficking as a theme is considered because we discover that many people are trafficked today. Of course, the ILO, or International Labour Organization, estimates annual global profits generated from trafficking around the US dollars of 32 billion US dollars. And this is so huge for us to consider. So you will discover that all of that is something to reckon with. And in Nigeria, of course, it is said that Nigeria is one of the leading African countries engaged in trafficking, with cross-border and internet trafficking put together. So it is these forces of globalization that have occasioned this kind of trend. And in this particular segment, we have also tried to further shed light on globalization. I would say that globalization ensures the linking up of economies of the world in a unified system. And then we said also that there is also the existence of an integrated communication that allows room for the operation of free market forces. And the consequence of this is that it exposes people to poverty and several dehumanizing conditions, which invariably leads people to criminal activities such as human trafficking, drug abuse, as it were. And all of these are occasioned by these forces of globalization. And we have said that in order to curtail this, we have tried to recommend certain things. And we say that, of course, migration from one part of Nigeria to the other is good. It should be encouraged in order to ensure unity and cohesion of the country. Because if I move from Makurdi and stay in Lagos, or if I move from Makurdi and stay in Ibadan, and I see people, and I have people there, and I'm interacting with people in that place. We live harmoniously. Of course, there will even be intermarriages, and this kind of intermarriages also foster unity. So people should not be stopped. People should not be discouraged from moving from one point of Nigeria to the other, because this will create some form of unity and cohesion. But I've also said that the paper also says that migration of people from Nigeria to other parts of the world in search of better living conditions be discouraged, because this is a way of further underdeveloping our nation. Our government needs to consciously work towards providing jobs for as many as are in Nigeria, and also to ensure that there are better living conditions for people in Nigeria. That way, people will be discouraged from moving, from moving from Nigeria to the other parts of the world. And then government should also consciously provide modern social amenities in rural settings. Of course, some other governments have tried this, but it has not honestly given the kind of fruition that one would say it has. It should bring to bear. So governments of Nigeria, as they are subsisting, they should take this as a very, very important issue, that they should consciously provide modern and social amenities in rural settings in order to discourage massive movement or migration of people from rural areas to urban centers. Because when this is the case, they will discover that the trend scares up criminal activities in such urban centers. You have several of such urban slums today in Nigeria because of this kind of phenomenon. But when amenities are provided in rural settings, you will see that people will be in their areas, and they may not necessarily need to come and flock in the urban areas so that they will seek better living conditions. Now, the Nigerian government should also sustain the fight against human trafficking through the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. And this fight is important because it will go a long way in sanitizing the nation, and it will also project the image of Nigeria positively in the world. So by way of conclusion, I've said that the external influence of forces at some point stimulated forced migration in Nigeria, and these forces revolved around the trans-Saharan trade and transatlantic slave trade. And during the colonial times, even up to the post-colonial times, there emerged massively rural-urban migration in Nigeria. And I've also said that this phenomenon was caused by the colonial authorities and was further sustained by post-colonial governments. And so I've also concluded that globalization and its attendant issues paved the way for such vices as human trafficking in Nigeria. But the government of Nigeria should sustain its fight against this menace, and that way to ensure the peace and development of the country. So having said that, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for this very interesting topic. You have done well. You can see people are already clapping for you. Thank you so much. I will allow all the audience to make some comments and ask some questions. However, I want to say that you said colonialism invaded the rural settings. So it means that there were things in the rural settings that made them invade the rural settings. I think I got that from your presentation. So I think it would be nice to mention those things specifically that attracted them in the rural settings. Maybe this will help our government to reinstate those things, because if there were no good things in the rural settings, they would not have invaded, and they would have actually just stopped at the cities. But there were things that were attractive there. So those things can be mentioned and as well recommended for the government, maybe to bring back, that enviable state that made colonialism invade the rural settings. Now I'm going to give our former Vice Chancellor. No, please, you wait for all the questions. Sorry, all the questions taken, noting them and all the comments, and then at the end, you're going to respond. So just note them down, you know. So I'm going to call on our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Abdallah Obadamu. He wants to make his point. Sir, over to you.
For this quite, again, interesting topic of migration. And I don't think there will ever be a time when we will be tired of listening to migration, because it's a very focused human interest activity. It deals with us, it affects us one way or the other. My issues with this particular paper are three. Number one, I would have loved to see empirical data on the trafficking that he mentioned. Because so far it seems like it is a theoretical perspective, but I would have loved to see if there's any empirical data on trafficking. Because whenever we're talking about migration, I would love to see it backed up by empiricism. About railway and all that, those are historical figures that we know, they are there in our archives. But what we don't know are things of the post-colonial state, I think that deal with day-to-day activities. For instance, if you are dealing with bandits, you could just simply say bandits did this, bandits did that. But we'd like to know how many bandits did what, at what location, what were the laws, and so on. So my view is that if you are considering the paper for publication somewhere else, it might be a very good idea if we can have a little bit more empiricism. Empirical data tends to convince people far much more. That's number one.
Thank you.
Number two, I would have loved again, whether even if it is in just one place, like Mokurdi or somewhere, how international migration affected local economy. It is not enough for us to know that Igbos have moved from this place to that place to that place, but how has such international, not international, within the nation, people moving from one place to another, when they move, how have that affected the local economy? What competencies do they bring with them? What skills do they bring with them? What money? I mean, even if it is when they design their own houses, have they stimulated the local? Have they affected the way people design houses now? Have they stimulated the economy? Like for instance, in Kano where I live, most of the electricians are Yoruba. So we would like to know whether their migration of the Yoruba electricians has now impacted on the production of Hausa electrician. You know, so that kind of field work data is what will make people stand up and say, yes, that there is value in migration. Even in criminal behavior, if you go to the police stations and ask them, can you give me the nationalities of the criminals who have been conducting criminal activities, who are not indigents of this particular place, then you know that migrants either contribute to economy in good way or in bad way. So I think it's more of empiricism that we would love to know. It's not enough to just simply say people move from one place to another. They do, they have to. But in what way has their movement been significant to the recipient communities? And not just even in terms of economy, but also in terms of tolerance, anthropology, in terms of tolerance. Are they now more accepted? I'll give you an example. Migrants from Edo settled in a particular area in Kano State called Panshekara, and they have integrated as part of the community. But recently, one of them married an American woman whom he met online. And everybody is saying, oh, a Kano boy, a Hausa boy has married an American woman because they met online. So his parents were originally from Edo, but because of his domestication in Kano, he is now, the narrative online is now a Hausa boy has married an American woman, which is fine. Well, there's no problem with that. So we needed to know the real impact of the new arrivals into the anthropology as well as the economy of the society. Finally, sorry, moderator, I'm taking too long. Finally,
it's okay, sir.
Very fine question, sir.
Yes, and then finally, in your comment, you are saying that government should discourage rural migration, discourage external. Okay, you are saying government should discourage external migration, that Nigerians should not migrate to other places. You are saying that, but then at the same time, yeah, and at the same time, in another breath, You said they should encourage urban-rural drift. Urban-rural drift.
Yes.
Wait, you will answer at the end, Doctor.
Yeah, no. I seem to get you that you are discouraging external migration, but you are encouraging internal migration. So if you have people from villages who decide to move out of the villages just simply become poorer because the skilled people have been taken away and they have come and enriched the cities. I would have thought that your argument would be the reverse thing, that when you come to the city and become well established and acquire new skills and acquire wealth, you should go back to the villages and produce what you have created in the city, like electricians, for instance. You are saying, I have some Yoruba or Igbo or whatever electrician, they have come to a city, they have established a business, and everybody is very happy with their work. I would have thought that these same people will now go back to their villages and set up something similar, so that those people in the villages will not feel the need now to come out to the rural areas in order to look for, to the urban areas in order to look for jobs, because the jobs are being created there. So in other words, the migrants who have left their villages for cities and have contributed economically to the development of labor and skills in those cities should be encouraged to go back to their villages. They don't have to go there and stay permanently, but they should go there and stimulate industry, stimulate growth, stimulate development, so that eventually there will be a more or less even pace of development between the urban area and the rural area. So these are my observations, and I think of all the ones that I've been hearing so far, yours is the most thought-provoking, because as we were talking, I was saying, no. I mean, I have to say something. I have to say something, and these are some of the things I have to say. But well done, sir. Well done, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please, I want to know, is there any other person who wants to make a comment or ask question? Any other person? I think our audience should try to say something so that we improve his paper. I saw that Professor Aja came in so early. Miracle Aja, do you want to say something? You came early to this presentation today. I'm sure you got it all. So can you make a comment, sir?
Is he around?
Well, he's on the line from what I can see.
He's on the line, but not necessarily around.
Around, okay.
Well,
So
any other person? If there's no other, the professor can probably. Okay.
No other. Yes. Okay. Okay. Professor Shishima is having his hand up. So let's hear from Professor Shishima. Then he can now answer or make his own comments. Professor Shishima, over to you, sir.
Okay.
You have to unmute him.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. I want to first of all congratulate the sector for doing a good job. But my comments, the issue of will be on the issue of forced migration. An area we need to. I think it's an area we need to. The way you talk about human trafficking. Especially when you talk about I will encourage the center. I will encourage the center. Yeah, and its impact on Nigerians on the Nigerian society, it relates to migration, particularly
has actually laid a very solid background, as it were, for this paper. Why I'm saying that, why I mentioned the fact that he has laid a solid background is that all of his comments are in order, though some of the issues he's raising with respect to empirical data, provision of empirical data. Of course, that is even the core aspect of this. In the absence of such data, you cannot honestly drive home your points effectively, and I understand.
Please, you can unmute yourself, Dr. Vigil. Unmute yourself.
Have I done
There was a
that?
bad no, unmute yourself. You are still muted.
Yes,
you are okay. Yes, you are okay now.
Yeah, so I say that his comments are in order. And for instance, when he mentioned the fact that empirical data should be provided, it's quite in order because more of such statistical information that are required, though some are provided in the full paper, but in other areas, we need to honestly add that. Where I have to also respond, again, using my line of thought, is in this direction of urban-rural migration, where he said, of course, I should be discussing the other way around, that people should be encouraged to move from urban centers to the rural areas. You will discover that when one is established already in the urban center, most of these people, of course, develop their country homes in the rural settings, but they are not honestly interested in migrating, as it were, to those rural settings, because some of those amenities they enjoy in the urban centers are not just available in the rural areas. And the point I'm making is that the only way that you can make the rural settings habitable or attractive for some of these kind of persons is talking about is by providing such amenities as light, as water, potable water, food goals, and all that. And you know, these things cannot be handled by individuals. It is government. So, which was why I pointed out that government needs to develop the rural settings. But of course, this line of argument is also very, very, very clear and okay, because I feel if you have migrated to the urban center and you have acquired wealth, it behoves on you honestly move to your rural setting and develop it, even by way of adding your kind of contribution to what government is doing. So that one is, and I so much enjoy that argument. Now the other one, which you move to your own rural area and even develop it. So that is in order. But the point I was also making was that I said before you have this kind of people giving attention, before you compare or make them, convince them to have this kind of interest in their rural settings. Again, it's only by developing those rural areas when they are fully developed and provided with the social amenities. Then these people can also even think of migrating to live there. And like I mentioned, I said it is only and it is only when government is involved, because government is the one that is charged with this kind of responsibility.
I'm sorry, Frog. Please forgive me, but I'm sorry, I disagree. You are insisting that the rural development can only happen if the government intervenes. My argument is that we're not looking for big electricity or big water works or for fantastic highways and roads. No, this is an electrician who migrated to somewhere else. He acquired skills. He established people and things like that. All he needs to do is come back and train one or two people so that people in the village can now acquire those kind of skills that he has. He doesn't need a massive electricity.
I think that is okay.
Yeah,
I think I understand you better now. I think that is okay, and I think those arguments will be canvassed in that one. And I hope to also integrate them in that order as you have mentioned. Now it's clearer to me. It's clearer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. I'm sorry, I have to go to the
No, it's okay, sir. Thank you so much.
I understand what you were saying.
Yeah,
but of course, those empirical data will also be integrated in the full paper when I'm submitting the full version of the paper.
Okay.
And the issue of those issues that attracted the colonial government, the rural settings, those aspects will also be integrated, because It's also a useful comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Any other person that wants to make a comment? Looks like we are okay. No other comments. So on this note, if no other comments or questions, then we have to call it a day. And on that note, we are going to thank the presenter for sharing his academic property with us. It's been so interesting. And this is the way we are going to end our presentations for 2021. And we are going to come back by His grace in January, sometimes in January, and it will be announced when we will have more presentations. So thank you, everybody, for being part of this. We appreciate